If someone were to describe a Kevin Weir story, what would you hope they would say?
I've heard that my thing has been not realizing when I write horror. Like eldritch stuff just tends to find its way into like all the stuff I do. And I like to think those like weird sequences where it doesn't seem to make sense, but I find a way to make it make sense would be my signature.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pen to Plot podcast with your hosts, KJ Herman and Chelsea Fawcett.
Hey, we're your creative besties, and we're here to cheer you on and help you stay inspired to achieve your writing dreams.
Today is a very special episode, not just because we've been teasing having a guest on the podcast for like literal months, but also because our very first guest is an unstoppable creative force. His work has been described as riveting, genre-blending adventure of futuristic sci-fi technology and dark fantasy.
That's right. He's the author of several well-regarded novels, including Endless Hunger, All Gods Fall, and Ink for Blood, along with writing other short stories and film scripts. An AMPIA award-winning writer and director and co-host of The Third Space and Mystery Outsiders and Abs. He is a self-proclaimed weird writing man. We're so proud to introduce him, our friend, Kevin Weir. Heyo!
Hello!
Woo!
Hi!
Kevin.
It's great hearing the things I've done said back to me.
Yes, we're talking at you and giving you all your introductions back. It's a warm fuzzy. It's a compliment bath. That's what we're doing.
It's good because sometimes I forget about them.
Isn't it weird to have like, I've done that before too, where you've had to like submit a bio and then it's like someone's like reading it back to you. And you're like, oh my gosh, I actually have done a lot.
Sometimes I'll submit a bio and someone will be like, you didn't write down that you won an award. I'm like, oh, right. That's a thing. That's a thing that people like.
That's
Don't forget about that. You've done important things. You've done some pretty cool things. And we're really excited to chat about them.
And also, we've done some pretty cool things together because we've worked with Kevin before in various different projects. So I feel like we're going to go down memory lane as well for a couple of our story times as we go down.
Yeah, it seems likely. Seems likely enough.
Oh, yes. And Kevin, it's been a minute. So I feel like my first question before we even get into anything writing related or artist related is just, how are you?
I'm doing great. I like to think. I'm doing great. I've been now being able to sort of do writing adjacent stuff full time. So I've been working outside of the structure of what I would say is normal life, and it's been a time just sort of being able to work on my own schedule, which has been nice.
I love that. And the best part about that, and I guess I want to hear your opinion, the best and worst part that I feel about being self-employed or being like my own boss is also that I have to be my own boss, which means I have to I'm a terrible
manage. Employee.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Me too. I totally, I feel you.
The work-life management versus life work management is not always balanced.
It is weird to essentially be like, all right, well, I got to make sure I get in the hours I need to work every single day. And then now I'm done work. So I'm going to go to the other side of the room, which means I'm no longer working when I'm on the left side of the room.
That's fair.
Or when I sit down on the couch that's currently behind me.
Especially when you work from home and you have home offices, it's like, okay, I'm in this room. This is where I'm writing and I'm working. And then once I close that door, it's the rest of my house.
Yeah. Well, sometimes also if you're just someone who, is still on the computer, it's like, all right, I'm done working. I will close that window and now go to my fun window.
Exactly. Again, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. We're happy to chat with you, as always. And okay,
so should we just dive into it?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay.
So I know you from a bunch of different mediums. We've worked together in film. We've worked in pre and post production together creatively in multiple different various mediums. I've seen your writing in script, prints, and books. And so what I want to know is, when we start from the very beginning of a root of an idea, when you just have a seed, is there a process that you go through to decide which medium to write that story in that you feel is the most impactful? How do you decide which medium to go through?
I think it's weird to say that sometimes that stories thrive in certain medias, or like are made for certain mediums. I don't think that's inherently like an absolute. Like, there's not, like, you can write stories, you can make a story for different mediums, but I find that what makes me feel like if something should be made in a certain way comes down to the visual elements, I guess, of it. When you think of like what's the difference between film, print, and novels, or I mean even video games, I guess, to an extent, they each have different strengths and different weaknesses. So I think as like a very specific example, flashbacks are something that I find in books can be kind of jarring. But if you have a story that involves a lot of seeing somebody's past, or a lot of needing to have those moments, that tends to be a thing that film is a bit better at. Not saying you can do anything. If you're an excellent writer, you can get away with anything. But there are certain elements I think just thrive in some medium. So I tend to look at, what do I want the audience to get out of it, and what do I not want to throw them off of their viewing, reading, experiencing pleasure.
Right. And so you'd mentioned a little bit about like what you can and can't show, and how that leads me into my next question around world building. And, because we, as writers, we have much more control over that when we're in control of all the senses. As a novelist, we have less control of it in the theater when we're a playwright, or when we are doing screenwriting. So when you're building a story and building that world, how much of a character does that world play for you?
For me, hugely. Like I primarily write fantasy and science fiction, and that tends to be from world up. When you're doing something that's either in a completely different world, sort of second world thing, or you're, as I've done with Endless Hunger, it is on Earth, but it's a completely different version of Earth than we're used to. Making your characters feel like they can fit in a world that feels real is one of the best ways to get the audience to actually believe that these characters are going through something that they'll want to see, they'll want to root for. But the only way to do that is for them to believe that there's possibly a world that this can happen in, no matter how fantastic the world is, no matter if it's Discworld and sitting on back of turtles and elephants. Because the audience understands the world, they'll understand the character. So I think the world plays such a huge play in that.
So then when you're world building, what are the first steps that you take creatively to creating the rules of that world?
It depends on what I want from the story. In all God's Fall, I started literally All God's Fall is the idea of these people journeying through almost their world's like creation myth. So I legitimately started with like, what is an interesting story for like how a world could be created and what a people would interact with a certain creation of a world. For something like Endless Hunger, which even though it takes place in the future of Earth and involves magic now, that one actually started with what the magic system was and what I wanted the characters to be able to do, and what I thought would be interesting things off of this magic system based around kind of finding the link between magic being this floating thing in the ether and how Wi-Fi and our radio signals are just kind of magic things floating in the ether. I know there's science behind it, but I don't understand it, so that makes it magic. And so for that one, it was a lot more of I know what, or I have these ideas for how I want the magic to be presented to the audience, or I want those plot points to be presented to the audience, and made the world fit around it. There's some people who will say world building is like, oh well, you got to make sure you have this like rigid structure, and that's true, but as the author, you're also making it up. So if you want your world, if you want someone to have the ability to, I don't know, shoot fire out of their eyes, and you want to make that work in the world, you can do that. You're the author.
I was going to ask, it's really interesting that you're like the blend of the magic systems in with like futuristic sci-fi tech. How do you approach that, or like what drew you to want to blend those two things together?
I think part of it is I think when you grow up reading a lot of one thing, one of two things happen. Either you become very, very obsessed with that one thing and you want to keep on replicating that. Or you kind of get, I don't want to say bored of it, but you get used to it. So you want to try to make something new. I grew up reading a lot of like medieval fantasy, like the classic Tolkien, all this stuff where we're talking about Middle Ages, England-ish, England adjacent, and that is what I grew up a lot reading. So when I was creating my own stories, I found that I wanted to sort of push it forward a little bit. And so when I started with Endless Hunger, I wanted to be like, all right, let's do Far Future, which I'm not a pioneer of that. That's like Shadowrun. There's a lot of things that use that kind of blending of tech and fantasy. And then even for things like All Gods Fall or Ink for Blood, I chose to do it in eras like, the Victorian era, or the even just pushing ahead far enough where I'm like, the technology is a bit higher than what you would see in Tolkien. And thinking about how the world would adjust, especially if magic is well known in the world, how does the world adjust around that? In Ink for Blood, because they have this level of technology that they didn't usually have in the Victorian era, we see that like, vehicles have appeared a lot earlier and are a lot more prevalent than they were before in certain areas of All Gods Fall, because people have ability to magic. Weaponry hasn't really pushed forward as far as other technologies has, just because that is where people's interests lie. That's what we already have access to. So we don't need to do the technology for what magic can do.
Yeah, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't needed to. It sounds like as well.
Yeah. Well, when it comes down to it, when we make things in the real world, we make things to fulfill gaps in what we are able to do. So if we are able to do more, like if people were able to, fly through the air at high speeds, we probably wouldn't make planes. And it's trying to figure out where do those, what are the ramifications of the new natural abilities?
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack anything.
No.
But I want to go a riff on that because it's really interesting. But yeah.
No, it's great. I want to keep going and keep that momentum of have you found that like that there's something you've written, and like, because you have experience with fans and audience from a couple of different mediums, like you just gave an example with your novels, but I know that you're a playwright as well, and you have seen your work be taken in live by an audience. Is there anything that is a memory or a story that you could share about how your writing has landed with an audience that has then returned back to you as a surprise?
Yeah. So Ink for Blood, I remember going up to Edmonton for the Edmonton Expo. The first time I was there, I met a reader. Their name's Comet, and they do a lot of like TikTok stuff. And they I told them about Ink for Blood, because that's what you do at these conventions. You just talk to people about your book a million times over. And they ended up taking it and reading it. And I like to bring up that if everyone's like, oh, what's Ink for Blood? I'm like, well, this is the book that made a teenager cry on TikTok. So,
oh no,
good.
What a great
in a
intro!
Good way. They seem to like it, but I do remember seeing the video of them reading a section of the book and being very, very, very sad.
oh no.
But don't you love that? I love that. Your work has so much impact over a person. That must be like really satisfying.
As long as like the stated goal is to make, if the goal is to make a sad section and then it makes people sad, then yeah, you've succeeded. You've done it. It's like you trying to make a joke and people laugh. It's the same context.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Kevin, for someone reading your work for the first time, what do you hope they feel or experience by the end of the first chapter? So going into that emotion that we were just kind of touching on.
Since I do so much fantastical worlds, and I'm very proud of doing like very different worlds, or at least different takes on worlds. I hope that by the time they reach the end of the first chapter, they feel like invested in the world as a whole. I hope that they feel I hope that they want to keep reading. They feel excited about what's going on. But I hope that they feel, I think excited honestly is what I would be hoping that they get out of it. I write a lot of things that are adventure or mystery in there as well, but a lot of like action adjacent things. So I hope that they feel like they're about to go on an adventure, even if it is a bit maybe more of a more contained adventure, as with Endless Hunger, which is more of a mystery. But yeah, I hope they feel excited.
So Kevin, I want to talk about the fact that you're a published author, and that's pretty cool. That's something that a lot of authors, right? That's something a lot of authors aspire to, right? It's kind of, in some ways, can be really the goal. And I feel like what comes along with that is feedback, and people are reading your work, and you're developing a fan base. And, correct me if I'm wrong, or steer me off if I'm going in the wrong direction, but it feels like nowadays there's also a pressure for writers to also have communication with their fans via social media and various different outlets. So it's not just about writing, but that you have to have more communication beyond your work, because fans want to talk to who they're reading and ingesting the art from. And so, that's a new element of writing that I want to hear more about your experience in, and if that has informed your career in any bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because you start out and you're hearing from friends and family, and it's great to hear from them. But you always have this little bit of like, oh, are they just saying it to be nice? But when you hear from like fans who you've only met briefly at conferences or conventions, or just people who have found your work online, and you hear them, just saying nice things that they liked your work or they connected with a certain character, is amazing, honestly. Just to be able to know that there are people out there that like what you do, and that what you're doing means something to them. And yeah, it's interesting when they focus on certain things that maybe I didn't expect them to, and I'm always like, oh, maybe that's is something that I should think a bit more about, maybe focus on a bit more, and see see what I can do with the things that they like. Because if they like them, obviously there's something there.
Yeah. And it's cool because there's things that they're going to see that you're not going to see, or themes and motifs that they may have picked up on that allow you to create a self-discovery.
There's this idea that I think that like the audience is in the core, like the audience is like never wrong. Like if you feel something from a story, that is a true feeling. Like the story prompted that in you. If the author wants it to be something different, that's on the author to like to try to make it work. Right.
No, that's very true. So coming from that place of being published, I feel like our listeners will want to know what that journey was like for you, and what did you have to do to get your first publishing contract?
Well, it's unfortunately the thing that I think a lot of writers would absolutely hate, which is going out and meeting people.
Oh no!
Oh God!
Sounds like a nightmare.
It's very easy to imagine that you could just sit inside forever, and all you have to do is work on your work, and then that'll just happen. But unfortunately, there are a lot of other people involved in the writing process. So for me, I went to, and I've still been going to this writers conference in Calgary, Alberta, called When Words Collide. It's a long running conference. Recently it's changed over now. The Alexandria Writer Center is running it, and I've been going there for like, I don't think 10 years. It feels like 10 years, but I don't think it's been 10 years. And going there is a way to meet like publishers and meet other writers. And I spent a long time just like submitting Endless Hunger being my first book, sending it out to just emails out there to people, and that was, it's part of it. You got to do that. But when I went to this convention, I ended up meeting the to-be publisher of Endless Hunger, Edge, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember the first one. I must have pitched it to them because then I sent it to them. What I remember is the second year. Because I submitted the first year, and they liked it, and I was talking back and forth with their acquisitions editor at the time, Ella Beaumont, and they liked it, and she said like she enjoyed it, and they were going to hand along, and then I didn't really hear anything from them. So when we got around to next year, at When Words Collide, I heard that Ella ended up leaving as the acquisitions editor, and I'm like, oh well, so maybe it got like lost in the transition from when they were changing from acquisitions editor. So I was like talking to people. I'm like, okay, what I should do to last day of the conference, I should go talk to Brian, the owner of Edge. I'm like, that's what I should do. So I was in this restaurant at the hotel where it takes place, and I was walking across, and then I saw Ella Beaumont, who I'd seen on panels at this point. I'd never seen her before until I saw on the panels. I saw her getting just like pizza from the buffet. I'm like, oh, I should just say like thank you for all the kind words she said when we were talking on email. So that's the entire reason I went over. I went over like, hi, Ella, it was great. It was great to talk to you. I'm the author of Endless Hunger. We talked about that. I'm actually going to go over and talk to Brian right now and kind of like remind him that I exist. And she went, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the pizza in her hand, and then she looked at me and said, I'll go with you. And so what proceeded was probably the second most awkward walk in my life, as I walked with this woman that I've never like actually met before, as we just like go out of one building, how we have to cross the street and like wait for the lights. And I don't really know what to say in that conversation. Like, hey, say something good, I guess, when we get there. And then we got there, and we this is literally the sequence. We're going to the market room. Everyone's cleaning up because it's the end of the weekend. She looks at Brian and goes, Brian, this is Kevin Weir. He wrote Endless Hunger. It's really good. You should sign him. And I go, oh, hi. And then Brian goes, oh, hi. Send me an email. I'm like,
That is
got it.
best pitch.
That's fantastic.
And then both of us had our friends back at the restaurant. So we turned around, and then that was the most awkward walk of my life back. Because it was great. It was like obviously it was like an amazing sequence. But once again, what do you say after that?
How's that pizza?
Just
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks
Yeah.
for thanks was obviously right, and I did say thanks, but like that is a 5-minute walk back.
Oh, right.
That is
Oh my
hysterical.
goodness. That is
Yeah.
great. And you know what? I feel like that's such great advice for writers is just meeting people. Like I'm not in the producing world for books, but when it comes to plays and films, people want to invest in artists and people that they have some sort of working creative relationship with. And like you were saying, it takes more than one takes more than one person to get it published. Author's step one.
It's easy to look at the idea of it's who you know as a very like insular, like, oh, you only get there if you know certain people. But it's like, but you know someone because you are a nice, affable person that the person likes. And I know at this point, I know agents and I have people that I will call friends who are agents that I've pitched books to, and they've been like, not that one. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. So just because you know someone doesn't mean that you instantly will get everything you need. So don't meet people with the idea of like, oh, if I become friends with this person, or if I get myself into this exclusive group, then I'm gonna no. When I walked over to Ella, I literally just wanted to be, hey, I really like the panels you did this weekend. I like the kind words you said about my book. And then she was like, yeah, I'm going to go with you.
You see, that's so nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's what it's totally about. I mean, you can kind of sniff out those types of people that are like, oh, I want to be friends with you to like get something out of you. And that's not what people want. That's not what people want out of friendships and colleagueships. So yeah, it's got to be a two-way street of being just a cool person. People like Kina, I've said this, I think, on our podcast before, where it's like, I want to do cool stuff with cool people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Being
we don't exactly
authentic.
live in a world anymore, and I'm sort of happy about that, where you can just sort of be a jerk behind the scenes, but people only ever see the nice version. If you are a mean person to mean people hear about it now, and they don't want to support you. Like we were talking about fan interactions. It doesn't matter if your stuff's great if they think they do. Like, I don't want to talk to that person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay. So we've had pizza together. We have this pitch, this very blunt pitch, which I think is fantastic. Of just, you should sign this writer. And then hold on a second. Keep everything running. BRB.
Okay.
Pause.
Pause, Cabo.
Pause.
Just for a
Pause.
second.
Pause. Pausing.
So
Still
you
pausing.
have everything going, and then this happens. The physical copy of your book that I
Yeah.
have because I bought
Yeah.
it because I support my friends. So what was it like to have physical copies of your book? What was it like to hold it for the first time?
I mean, in my case, unexpected a bit, because when you do publishing these days, like your contract has certain things, like ways you're going to publish the book. When I first did it, they were like, we're going to do it's going to be ebook, and then the ebook will go for like a couple months, and then we'll do a print book. And then they're just like, I'm just doing a print book. So I just had like a physical book when I was being like, all right, in a couple months, I will have a physical copy, and I'll have it, I'll be able to hold it in my hand. And then suddenly it was just there, like literally a box like arrived at my house. It's I mean, it's if you're a writer, it's unlike anything else to be able to see the work that like you and the person, the was it the cover artist did, the editor did, the formatter did, all those things that that all the work that people did around what you have written is, it's unlike anything else.
I can imagine. I'm working on my very first novel right now. I'm looking forward to that sensation when it comes up. I can imagine it's just very gratifying to have your work
a very unique
physicalized.
A very unique sensation that like it's something that I think underappreciated, but people don't think about is that I'm sure sometimes you have to reference your own stuff if you're like, what did I call that thing when I wrote it a year ago? Did I do that? I will regularly just stand up and walk over to my shelf that has all my books on it and just take it out and go, what did I do? Which is it's very fun, rather than like going onto my computer like searching for the file.
It's like your own little encyclopedia for everything.
My own little Wikipedia, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so you touched a little bit, Kevin, on your interaction with a fan, the TikTok girl that cried on TikTok. Do you have any other, what's your craziest fan interaction that you've had, or your most fun?
Man, that is pretty high up there. Is that one? So I was once again Edmonton's where it happens, I guess. I was at the Edmonton Expo, and this woman walked by with like her kids in a stroller, and she walked by my booth like further away, so I don't notably I don't shout at people at Expo. If they're a distance away, that's where they are. But she walked by and she looked at the booth, and I saw her do like sort of like a double take. And then she stopped. She stared at it for a bit, and I was like, "Hi." She walked up and she said, "I think I read your book." And I'm like, "Oh, which one?" And she said, "All God's Fall." I'm like, "Oh." And she's like, I didn't know you'd be here. She's like, I found it online. I've like, this is not someone who I saw, because I'd been there. No, that was my first year there. So she had not. I asked like, were you in Calgary? Like, but no, she had found it online. And she turned to like her kid, her like 4-year-old kid, and said, "I read this guy's book." And I'm like, yeah. I don't think that I don't think the kid cares, but that's great. I think I said it earlier, like when you have your like friends and family and them doing it, it's great. But just like there's something special with someone who you have not only never met, you didn't have to do. You do a lot of like going to conventions and things. You do a lot of pitches. Someone who didn't have to do that for. Someone who saw it online, who saw where it's available, and was like, "That looks cool. I want to read that." And then like the world is so big. The world is so big, and we found each other at a convention I'd never been to before.
But before that,
she didn't know what I looked like. She was trying to figure out if from the cover and the name. She's like, "Are you Kevin?" I'm like, "Yes."
That's so wonderful.
That's so wonderful. That's hilarious. It's a small world in the end, isn't it? What's a misconception people have about writing sci-fi fantasy that you wish more readers understood?
Writing sci-fi and fantasy, or writing sci-fi fantasy?
Sci-fi fantasy, or sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah. It's funny because I think earlier I said that you're the author. You can do whatever you want. But I think there is a sort of like idea that when you're writing science fiction, fantasy, any of these like imaginative fictions, that you can just be like, you're just like come like just do the magic thing. Just have them come with something. Have them come up with the Star Trek like techno babble to figure out the tech, which is true for a bit, but at a certain point, to make the world feel complete, there starts being rules. There starts being rules that you're following. So it's not always just like come up, make a wizard do it. You you have to figure out how the wizard does it, or like why the wizard does it. And so I think maybe there's sometimes you get from people who are just like, just solve the problem. I don't know what to tell you. I had to be convoluted about it.
And if you just solve the problem, it's like, well, then where's the conflict?
Yeah.
In the story as well.
Fantasy, there's this whole thing of like detective fiction where like, mystery, detective fantasy, where like the mystery and magic. And I think there's a big connection between that, because at the end of a mystery, you want the audience to feel like, oh yes, I do understand. I do understand how that happened. And when people, reach the end of a fantasy novel and someone does something like, like very intense or very wild, you also want them to feel like, yes, I understand how this like new power generated, how it all works together.
Okay, Kevin. From my understanding, you have definitely done traditional publishing. Have you done self-publishing? And if you have, which one do you prefer right now at this stage in your career?
I've done self-publishing and what some people call a hybrid author. I do both of them. I do both of them actively. Prefer is interesting. They both have a lot of advantages and weaknesses. I think there's a lot of people who think that traditional publishing is like the publisher takes it and then like you don't got to do anything. You can just sort of sit back and let it go. And that's maybe true for like, if you're writing The Fifth Wing, but it's not really true for like any other level of it at all. You still have to do a lot of your own, or in conjunction with your publisher. You're still advertising, or not advertising. You're promoting yourself. You're still doing a lot of that stuff. You just sort of get a publisher at your back, which is helpful. The reason I started doing self-publishing is because I was writing something that publishers don't normally do, which was I was writing a serialized fantasy novel. That's what All Gods Fall released as an episodic novella series over a number of months. And that's just, it made sense to self-publish that because of the way I wanted it presented to an audience. And then Ink for Blood was also self-published, mostly as I'd done it before. I wanted to see if I could do it, if that makes sense. I had done it with All Gods Fall, almost forced to do it, and then I was like, oh well, this one from the top, I'll consider it like that, and I'll do it like that. And I think self-publishing is nice because you have a lot of freedom. Like you don't have to worry about publisher changing things. So though I've never had to deal with that when in my in things that I've done, whether it's like Endless Hunger or Rogue or any of the short stories that I've had in anthologies. I think what it really comes down to is that self-publishing, if you are able to like motivate yourself and you're able to put in all the work to actually put it out there successful, it's very you can just like toss something out into the wind and it probably won't do very well. But if you are willing to put the work in, I think there's a lot of success to be found in self-publishing. It's hard. It's harder. I do truly believe that it is harder in the back end. I think getting a publishing contract is quite difficult, but I think self-publishing, the process of doing it takes a lot more time. It's a lot.
Do you feel like I've just heard like a lot of conversation around this, but do you feel like self-publishing, I know that it's growing in popularity. Do you think it's going to continue to grow in popularity and almost become like the default? Or is traditional publishing still the one?
I think I cannot see it in the current way that we think about publishing. I cannot see it becoming the default because I think currently people put a lot of value on traditional publishing. And I think, especially because like, there's a lot of self-published books that will become traditionally published. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was a quote-unquote self-published book. It was, put online.
A fan.
But there's things like that where they get picked up and the traditional publishers grab them, and that is still seen as like you've won. You've done it. You've won because a traditional publisher has picked you up. So I do think it's growing, and I think it's great that it's growing, and especially I think that it's great that it's growing in. I really want to be clear here. There's self-publishing books are great, and people do put a lot of work into them, and there is also a lot of crap, I guess. But that's with anything. That's the same thing where like films, YouTube, like there's a lot of stuff out there when you have like anyone can put anything out there. Of course, you're going to get bad things out there, but you're also going to get really, really good things that traditional publishers would not take the risk on, and you'll get amazing stories. And I think people, because self-publishing is becoming more valued, people are putting more work into their self-published books, and I think that's great.
I want to ask a bit of a headier question for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is for you between creativity and inspiration?
I think that creativity and inspiration, I think they're different. They're different steps in the same process. Inspiration is what makes you want to make something. Creativity is what you do with what you are inspired by. There's a lot of people out there who will see something, oh, that's really cool, I want to do something like that. But if you just take your inspiration and do the inspiration again, then you're just kind of you're not adding any of yourself into it. Creativity is how you set yourself apart from all the other people doing the same thing you are. Like I have a lot of people say that my stuff's very weird or different, but there are a lot of people who do a very similar thing to what I do. I'm not the only one who's ever written like future fantasy. Nowhere close to it. There's so many other people who've done it before me and doing it at the same time as me. Same thing with like, doing a novella series. That's something that's been done since the 1800s. But the creativity is how you take those things and make them your own.
I love that answer.
Kevin.
Yeah.
What is a hill that you're willing to die on when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy writing?
The hill I'm willing to die on. I'm willing to die on a lot of hills, and a lot of very small hills.
A lot of mountains out of molehills.
It's fun to die on hills. It's a lot more fun to be invested in something than it is like to not be invested in something. I think that's when it comes to like to science fiction, fantasy writing, is that, you know what, I'm gonna say that I think like classic medieval fantasy, I think it's boring. I think just as humanity has evolved over time, we gotta move the window with what we see as fantasy as. I've been reading a lot more things and playing a lot of things where people just now like flintlock pistols and pirate area sailing ships or all those things, and it's so much more engaging, I guess, to see, because it feels like a lot more like the humans are involved in this. Sometimes you see a lot of like fantasy stuff and it feels like oh, the magic's happening and the people are there as well. But when you see like human technology or just like the things that humans make with it, then you sort of see, oh, they are integrated.
So pushing it into a more futuristic place, that's where your inspiration lies. And we need to go, we need to rethink our magic system.
I don't know, man. Even just go from like the 1500s to the 1600s. Like we've been writing fantasy for a long time. We just got to keep pushing. Just just shift that window up a little bit. There's a lot of fans of classic high fantasy who are like, no, that's fair.
But we've had it, right? Yeah. We've got Tolkien. I mean, he's the big one, but yeah, there's room to explore.
Yeah,
and we
Tolkien, Jordan, some of Sanderson's stuff. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. That leads into kind of my next question. So every great fantasy writer seems to have some sort of like a signature. So like Brandon Sanderson with his like really complex magic systems. Neil Gaiman with modern myth making. Neil Gaiman's kind of controversial right now. But if someone were to describe a Kevin Weir story, what would you hope they would say?
I've heard that my thing has been not realizing when I write horror.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft's writing. Speaking of controversial people, but he's dead, so that's fine.
It's a long
the writing,
long of the past.
But like Eldritch stuff just tends to find its way into like all the stuff I do, and I like when things get very metaphorical in like what happens. I have people say I have sequences where I just write like just atmospheric details, which I just assumed was just how you write a book, and then people be like, yeah, you spent a lot of time just like explaining these weird aberrant things that happen. There's a sequence in All Gods Fall where I think I had the most fun at, which is where how to do this without also spoiling live, but teasing it, like a good person who's promoting their work would do. Where they're in a city where there are these things that create zones of like history, like that contain people's memories, so you can like go through history. And there's a moment where someone's chasing someone and they're running through like old memories, and there are moments where like the explosions are happening and they're like causing parts of the memories like break out, and the building, like old buildings from different times, to come in, and like the world starts like turning because it's just all the people who live in this city's memories are getting all like twisted together. And that was very fun to write. And I like to think those like weird sequences where it doesn't seem to make sense, but I find a way to make it make sense, would be my signature.
I love that. That's really cool. That's really interesting. And the Lovecraftian, I can definitely see that influence in your work as well. So.
Kevin, I want to give people a little bit more of some stories that people may or may not know about times that the three of us and the two of us have worked together, just in throughout when I was living in Calgary. So I want to ask you a question, and okay, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm not gonna give any preface. Do you remember when you, me, and Vanessa Wenzel went to Banff on a self-directed writing retreat to the Banff Center of Performing Arts?
I'll be real. I remember when you and me did it. I actually don't remember Vanessa being there.
That's okay.
So sorry, Vanessa.
That's okay. Sorry, Vanessa. We love you. So that leads me into something that viewers of the podcast will know that I'm a very site specific writer. I like writing in different atmospheres because it challenges me to fictionalize my reality. So like if I'm writing a scene that's in a restaurant, I will take my notebook and I'll actually make notes about the type of restaurant I want to be in, and I'll go try and find that type of restaurant. Or, I'll write a Dirty Dinge bar scene in a bar. And so that way I can incorporate types of realities. And that's what I love about writing retreats. And I wanted to know if you have found that writing in specific locations has changed your process, or if it changes some of the influence to it. And do you remember what you were writing that day?
Probably. Well, I'll start with the first question though. I like writing in different places. Like I'll go out to like BC. There's a not a cabin, but a place out there that I can go to that is that I enjoy writing. I don't know if it changes what my process is, but I know it helps me write. I think it just helps me focus. When you're in a place that's you're comfortable in, it's very easy to be comfortable, to just sort of be like, oh, I'm doing my work, but also I can just, I could go over, like I could like just turn on a video game. I could, do any of those things. But when you're in either like, off to the classic cafe or an Earl's restaurant down the street, or doing something a bit more like a writing retreat, even just like, going out to finding a place in Banff where you can sit around. It helps me separate and create a writing time, a time that this is when I am working on something. I'm not distracted by the fact that I'm like, oh, should I clean that cobweb that's in the corner of my room? When did a spider get in my room? Oh no, there's a spider somewhere in my room. Or thinking like, oh man, my desk is messy, I should tidy up my desk. Or looking over being like, I have things I could paint over there. No.
Right.
Being in a different place allows me to create this is a writing time. This is a time for me to do that. As for what I was writing back then, it was either I was writing it probably was All God's Fall. Probably an early version of All God's Fall. It was either that, or I might have been doing my script for Welcome to Shalebridge, which was like an early version of the pilot for some of the Shalebridge stuff that I've done. It was probably one of those.
Do you remember when we went to go film the trailer for Shalebridge?
I do. Yes. We had to find a random, not a random spot. I think we did know it was there, but pulled off the side of the road and found a river.
Yes, that was very early in the morning. I was very stressed out about being off book, and I wasn't off book. I did my best, but I don't know.
It was just a I was thinking that if anybody at like Alberta, BC who works in film knows, you've probably done at least one, like that was Story Hive, yeah? Or was it?
Wasn't it Story Hive?
No, it was. I think it was the.
Story Hive.
It was. Yeah, no, it was. I think it was the Netflix one. But
yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was a pitch. It was a pitch for like a network. I remember that.
But the I've done a lot of them now, so a lot of them tend to bleed together. But when you're doing those pitches, you make, we were just making like a pitch video, and decided like, you know what, this needs to be atmospheric. Let's put you in a forest. Let's have you talk in a forest. That'll do it.
I remember us having a lot of trouble with the water in the background.
Oh yeah,
being just like rushing.
Loud. Water's loud.
Yeah, we did not take that into consideration. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I feel like there's more memories, but Like those are the two like giant ones that come to mind for me. And while we were looking for,
Well, I mean,
looking through your past work,
you hosted a reading thing for that. At least one my play, a part of my play was read in. You did that.
Plays and pastries.
Yeah, plays and pastries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kina, I think you were there for that one.
It would. I think. I think so. I think
No.
it was your first one because I think you were like figuring it out, its thing out. It might.
No, I remember being in my the place I lived on 16th Avenue, and the very first one was hosted in Wendy's house. So, and I don't think you were a part of that one, or at least I don't remember. Either way, no, I remember that too.
A song.
Yes, that was the
some
very first
reason.
one. That was the very first one. Okay, all right. But also like, where are you with the ghostening?
We did a 4-episode like mini web series on it, and I still think about it sometimes. I like the premise of the ghosting. I like the ghosting.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Kina, do you know the ghosting?
I think I watched like the first episode.
Yeah, no, that's. I just want to make sure that
of it
you that what
on-
we're saying that
Yeah,
what it is.
it's the comedy.
It's a comedy ghost
Yeah,
hunting show, and especially I don't know if it's like now is the time that it's because at the time we did it, there were so many like for some reason ghost hunting shows was just like a thing. There's a lot of ghost hunting shows. I think people aren't really doing ghost hunting shows as much now, but. There was definitely a time of ghost hunting shows.
My favorite was like when you're handed your lunch and you're like, "This is just garbage."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my favorite joke in the whole thing. Oh, yeah. Let's move on to some other questions we have around looking ahead to some final thoughts. Kina, do you want to take it away?
Kevin, I can really tell that you're an author that's like carving out a very unique voice in the realm of sci-fi fantasy. For people listening right now, what work of yours should they start with? What's the best work right now that you have in your stack of novels and other works that they should dive into to get a sense of your storytelling?
I would probably suggest Ink for Blood is a pretty good one. Ink for Blood's a standalone novel, and part of the reason that not the reason that I wrote it because I had an idea for a while, but kind of like I put it to the top of my my work pile, my very deep work pile was because I met a lot of people at conferences and conventions who were like. They were very hesitant to get into a series when they didn't know if it was going to be finished. Let's just say some people in our genre has been our genre's readers have been burned in that. Just waiting. So I am definitely finishing the other ones. I say Ink for Blood is a self-contained story. It made a teenager cry on TikTok. And come on. Why would you like that? And then of course I always like to put people back to Endless Hunger. It was my first book. It's holds a nice place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. And
Perfect.
so we're talking about like serialized fantasy. Let's talk about what's coming up next. What's coming up next for you, Kevin? Can you tell me? Can you give us secret information?
Yes, if you
about All Gods Fall season 2.
Yeah. If you are a reader of out there reading, serialized fantasy and something that is still ongoing, so you get to journey along with other people as they're reading it. I am now about to, but by now, I think when this is released, not as about to. I'm releasing season 2 of All Gods Fall. It's starting at the end of March, on March 31st. The first ebook version of it will be released. And then you can expect every month or two afterwards, you'll get another episode, quote unquote, of it releasing. So you can follow along with the journey of Gaul and Marta.
That's fantastic. And yeah, if people want to support you, where can they find you?
Yeah, that's obviously a big question these days. Of social media, I think, is very much in flux. But I'm mostly active on. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Kevin Weir, author. I am also on. That's connected to a Threads account, so I'm also on there. Other than that, I have my website, kevinweirbooks.com. I'm technically on Blue Sky, which I think the way that works, it's like Kevin Weir dot Blue Sky. I'll be real, not super clear on how Blue Sky works, but I'm getting to it. It's like kevinweir.bluesky.social, I believe is what it is. And yeah.
And we'll put all your social handles in the description below.
Yeah, that'll probably.
Absolutely.
And very, very occasionally I stream on Twitch, so
that's great.
Yeah, so you can check me out there as well. The best way to figure that is to go through my social media, though.
Kevin, in regards to All Gods Fall, we're on TikTok, on Instagram, we're like, it's all about the vibes right now. And I'm wondering if you could sum up All Gods Fall in like up to 3 vibes, what would you say?
I would say it is the vibes of All Gods Fall is a foggy day, a distant shadow you can't really clearly see, and a warm campfire in the middle of the night.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Love it.
All right, love it. Perfect.
I see that's what you're asking for.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Kevin, it has been so much fun catching up with you and hearing more about your craft and getting to chat with you about writing today. And as always, just a pleasure to talk to you in general. So thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And you know, for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And if you're on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out more about Kevin Weir and get in touch, his webpage is kevinweirbooks.com, where you can find out all of his current available books, as well as his filmography and podcasts, The Third Space and Mystery, Outsiders, and Abs.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the Pen to Plot podcast. Also, if you're tuning in here on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps our content to get discovered so that we can share more inspiring author stories like Kevin's. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one. Keep creating, keep dreaming, and remember, your story matters. So let's write it.
Thanks so much.
Thank
we'll
you
talk
so much,
soon.
Kevin.
Bye.